Hi, and welcome to Behind the Briefcase. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are listening into this or watching it on the YouTube channel. I hope you've either had a great day or you're about to have a great day. Now, as you know, with this podcast, Behind the Briefcase, it's very much about looking at people who've achieved good success or great success within their life, taking risks and gambles to get to where they've got to, and actually looking behind the mask. So looking behind the LinkedIn profile, looking behind the Instagram, and what we sometimes will see as just pure success, like it was an overnight thing, and actually starting to learn some patterns of familiarity of how that person became who they were. Now, we've had some amazing guests so far in this podcast, and I hope you've really enjoyed listening into them. And please give it a like, a share, a comment, a subscribe, and let's get more and more people actually watching this and listening to the great guests that we have. Now, I'm absolutely honored today because I have someone with me who I would class as a friend, and someone who in terms of the business world have worked very closely with, and he's an absolute genius when it comes to tech. So today I'm lucky to be joined all the way from Sri Lanka. I believe that's where you are currently. I'm delighted to be joined by Noel Arokiam. Now, Noel is, just to give him a brief, he'll explain a bit about himself at this moment in time, but he's definitely what you class as that tech entrepreneur. He's always ahead of the curve. He's the CEO and director of a fantastic company called DXDY, which is based out of Sri Lanka, but delivers worldwide. With over 20 years experience in tech, we're going to learn a lot today, not just about cultures and international business, but also very much around things in the tech world today, as it's an ever fast expanding industry. So I think you're going to find this one really, really interesting in terms of what the future holds. So without further ado, let's stop me doing all the talking. Let me introduce you to Noel himself. So Noel, thank you very much. I don't know what time it is over there. I'm recording this for everybody. It's 10:07 here in the morning. So Noel, what time are you on?
It's 2:30 in Sri Lanka.
2:30. So I'm glad I've not got you up in the middle of the night, which I've often done sometimes,
Not at
or
all.
been having meetings very late in the evening over there. So, Noel,
Absolutely.
do you want to just tell the audience a little bit background who you are?
Sure, sure. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. And this is amazing work that you've been doing, introducing a bunch of the stuff that you've been doing in different mediums. I follow and I also listen to most of the stuff that you do. Amazing work. And thank you again for having me and very kind words you had at the beginning. So yeah, nothing major. I'll dive into it. I think I've been in technology from 2004 and held different positions, different companies around the world, doing delivering different types of work, right? So at this point, I'm with DXDY. This is a company that I'm a part of ONC's Capital, actually. This is a company that two of my other colleagues who we used to work at LSCG together, Faik Faiz, Kamila Amarasinghe, and myself, when we left LSCG, that's the company that we put together. And DXY was our first acquisition, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And I've had the privilege of running that business for the past 6 years now, 5 to 6 years almost. So that's where we are. And in terms of, I've held various positions, run various functions within technology. Technology is my passion, and driving a business in technology has been a real privilege.
I love that. And we're going to touch on a few things today that I
Sure.
think the UK audience will really enjoy, because I think we'll be able to look at sort of like where Sri Lanka is as a country in terms of technology,
Yeah.
and why people are investing into that country in particular, for the technology software development. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting, as I said before, for people to understand, because we are in this modern day world where everything is technology, and things are changing all the time with the introduction, or we're seeing the implosion of AI in everything. So I think from that perspective, a lot of people are going to want to listen to what you've got to say. But I'm interested in going behind the mask first and foremost. So I want to know a bit more about Noel himself, because we've heard all the wonderful accolades that you've done in being a leader. So, I mean, in terms of Sri Lanka, Noel, you're someone that's traveled around the world and lived in many countries, or at least spent a long time in different countries. So, what the small boy growing up in Sri Lanka, what was that like?
Yeah, I think, growing up in a middle class family, we didn't have much when we grew up. But I think what the emphasis was always on education, where my parents, my dad was a medical professional, my mom was a teacher. So I think the emphasis was always on education. You can tap around any Sri Lankan middle class family, any kid would pretty much give you the same story.
Mhm.
So we had to go to school regularly. There is no way that you could, there were some misfits, but of course, I would like to call myself that too at some point. But we all focused on education. We try to get that out. So, which comes around today, if you look at Sri Lanka's 20 million population and the amount of graduates that you have in various fields, and also specifically in technology, you have a very good base. So, using this base, there are so many Sri Lankan companies which have gone globally. For example, the company that I used to work for, Millennium IT, was acquired by the London Stock Exchange Group, purely for building the world's fastest trading platform at the time. I believe it's still the same, slightly outdated in terms of the data, but I think that's the kind of pedigree in terms of technology that Sri Lanka has. And then very recently, there's a Sri Lankan company which is called WSO2, which is a global middleware firm, and they do so much of other technically complex kind of platforms. So this company also was acquired recently for $600 million. So in the recent past, that was one of the highest grossing um, technology firms that were sold out, right, or acquired rather. So that's the kind of pedigree that Sri Lanka has in terms of technology. So I know I digress slightly, but
You're
so
fine.
me as a person, yeah, I think that was the emphasis. I always wanted to go into finance. I did my management accounting. I did my business administration degree and so on and so forth. But I always had this knack for technology because in early 2000s, what I was preached that, with time, you got to know your technology. You cannot run any business without technology. So that was, I guess, a seed that fell in very early. So I started looking for technology. Though I qualified in finance, etc., I did most of my early parts of my career were mostly in technology. It could be in sales, pre-sales, business analysis, project management. So in a way, I think I was blessed to be able to cover all of those areas so that now I run an organization where we look at acquiring organizations who are in
Okay.
technology. This kind of helps me to do a deep dive in terms of identifying these areas. So I think it's nothing short of a blessing to be able to kind of hit all of those notes
Mhm.
so that, when I've arrived at ONC's Capital doing all of this work in terms of mergers and acquisitions, this is really helpful.
So
So
something
that's
you've
the
just said
understory.
there, Noel, that's quite interesting. The people that I've interviewed so far, who've mainly been UK based,
Yeah,
what I've seen as a familiar pattern is they were okay at school. They were sort of like middle ground.
yeah,
But something was missing, something that to grab their attention, to get them really focused and interested in something. School didn't have that for them. So what happened when they left school? It would be either go and do a low paid job, or something inside them sort of like found something that they became very passionate about, and all of a sudden they became an entrepreneur out of that. They started their own business, and the people that were getting the A's and the B's were the people that ended up working for them. So they were in the main C grade. And I hope I'm not doing a disservice to anybody that's appeared on the podcast so far, but it's certainly
yeah,
my story as well. The passion came after education. So I think what you found is actually these people were extremely bright and gifted and very academic, but needed to find their love to become academic within. What I'm interested in is whether that's because there was more openings in the UK. Because when you actually look at Sri Lanka and you talk there about, your parents with the medical professions and obviously very academic, there's a lot of cultures, particularly Asian cultures, etc., like that, where you've got the mother and the father saying you're either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a surgeon, or you're going to be in technology. Did you find that Sri Lanka was very much positioned where they were created, the education system was built to create you on a journey into a certain sphere?
Yeah, I think it's fundamentally the systems kind of, that's how the system kind of works. But what happens is, Sri Lanka being Sri Lanka, we can only afford to make X many doctors per year. I
Yeah,
mean, if we could afford to make 200,000 engineers a year, trust me, we would.
you do.
But unfortunately, the infrastructure does not support that. So what happens is, though you're bright, there are very few options outside of university for you to get qualified. So if you're good, then you get into a career and then you learn as you go.
Mhm.
So that's absolutely critical. But to your point, Paul, if you dropped out of school, you I mean, I'm not saying that you can't find your way up, but it's seldom that you find entrepreneurs,
Okay.
businessmen in the country who've kind of made it really big.
Hmm.
um, so it becomes tough
Yeah.
because you don't have the education to essentially land a job, and then continue. But having said that, there are a lot of individuals who've had the grit, who've not at all gone to school, who've been laborers essentially, day workers, etc., and they've built, fortunes and
Yeah.
empires. So you do find them, but in comparison to the UK, I would say we would have less such success stories in Sri
Yeah,
Lanka.
but I don't think that's a bad thing, and we see it all the time. The UK, without the foreign input, would not have many doctors or nurses or
Yeah,
tech developers, in so many fields and aspects of the industry. So we've been
so
very reliant on the education systems
correct.
from abroad because we've not really produced our own in the quantities that we needed to. And maybe that's because there is so many different opportunities out there that it doesn't allow you to sort of like funnel into one direction. But
Absolutely.
that's the great thing about being a multicultural society where people want to come to your country and develop themselves. I mean, in terms of you, how much was language important? So, in terms of what is the national language of Sri Lanka would be?
Sri Lanka is Sinhalese, is the
Yeah,
national language. So pretty much all of your government services, to announcements, etc., all of that is done in Sinhalese. And then you have Tamil, which is a secondary minority language. And then, of course, you have English. So, well, I am kind of differently positioned linguistically, if you look at it, because I am Tamil. That's my ethnicity essentially, or linguistic difference. So we are minority in Sri Lanka. So what happens is inevitably for you to be able to kind of get along, you cannot just, I would say, depend on your linguistic capabilities in Tamil. So right now, I think I can, I mean, I'm absolutely confident I can read, write three languages, including English, Sinhalese, and Tamil. So that's how you are able to get around. That is definitely an advantage
yeah.
because in an economy that's developing, if you cannot express and articulate your ideas, I think it will be very tough to get around.
I'm going to ask you a question on that because
Yep.
I've often thought about that. I think for if we look back over a prolonged period of time, then you would say that in the business world, if you like, that
Yeah.
English was the dominant language. And I'm not saying that to sort of like try and promote English, but the
Yeah.
Americans, the Australians, the British, they use English, as do Canadians, etc., like that. So if you were going to become an international business or a global business, or your business was exporting to different nations, and
Sure.
that was your market, then without a doubt, you would have to learning the language of English would be very, very important and prominent.
Yep.
But in England, we've kind of become what I would say lazy in relation to that, because if
Right.
everybody's going to learn a language, or the language that we speak, then why do we need to learn other languages? So language has never been a tool in education, yes, there is people that have gone on to learn French well and German well and Spanish well, but more sort of like for going on holidays or trips, etc., like that, not necessarily in
Yeah.
business. And you're from a country and origin where it kind of like was make or break. You learn this language, otherwise you're going to find possibilities become impossible or impractical. But is there, because you travel internationally, are you seeing development of other languages which are actually becoming as much as prominent? So would you be advising, like, let's say, for instance, you were advising the UK government on education, what
Yeah.
language would you be saying to them that they now need to teach within their education system because English won't be the dominant one?
Absolutely. It's tricky. Let me quickly share my experience in the
Yeah.
US quickly. When I was traveling around on the West Coast and the East Coast, doing work, etc., I think unlike one would assume, you had to, before you start a conversation with someone you didn't know, you had to ask them if they spoke English, which was quite strange because
Mm.
you didn't want to, someone would say, hey, Espanol only, or, Espanol. So how,
Yeah.
how do you kind of counter that? So that's pretty strange for us, right? So coming back to the UK, I would say, yeah, I think I don't know if I'll make a recommendation on a language per se, but I guess it depends on where you're trading the most.
Yeah.
If you're trading the most in France, I think then that would make more sense if that's the case. Hopefully, I'm not stepping on anyone's toes, but if that's the case, I think so for Sri Lanka, I think consciously because we work with a lot of non-English speaking countries as well as English speaking countries. But what has really helped us is the command of the English language that most Sri Lankans have. I would say majority of the Sri Lankans have has what kind of has helped us to kind of
Mhm.
work with the Americans, the Brits, the Australians, and most Commonwealth countries. So I think that's been an advantage for us,
Well,
definitely.
I'm just looking at when I visited Sri Lanka and you so kindly hosted me and took me around the
Yeah,
beautiful country. Um, Kind of when we were talking about where the investment money is coming into Sri Lanka from, you know,
yeah,
it was predominantly sort of like India, China, areas like that. So these are the countries that actually have the investment money, obviously,
correct,
to invest.
correct.
So I think what you're going to find within the UK market and businesses that are ahead of the curve, if you like,
Yeah,
um, will start to realize that if that's where the money is and that's where you've now got to go and do business too, then it would be in your benefit to start hiring people who could speak that language or certainly provide an education system that supports speaking that. And I go back to the culture that we kind of have. Your culture is very predominantly almost like you need to do this.
yes,
Um, we're more like a do you want to do this when it comes to languages,
yes,
and kind of we probably now need to move more towards you need to do this if you're going to succeed. So I'm always really interested when I'm listening to different cultures to see how they done it, because there's no doubt about it. Academically, other countries are kicking our ass and producing the best people, and producing people that are going on and building global businesses, and those are not just America and the UK anymore. It's France, Germany, India, Russia, China. I mean, the world is opening up hugely, and I think we've
yeah.
got to realize we're not the center of the universe. I know, I'm probably doing a disservice to the UK there, but I just sort of like the way I feel with our education system. It's stuck. Going back a little bit, no, in terms of your education, I did notice though that you went to university in the UK.
Yeah, so what happens is you have offshore campuses for these universities. So though I haven't set foot in the UK for education,
Ah,
you are able to kind of, so if you look at all of my education, it's all overseas. So there is a competitive exam which you need to write, which is called advanced levels, which is very similar to the UK. And based on how you grade, you get entrance to local university, which is fully funded education. So at the time, I made a call that I'm not going to go into a state university, that I would like to pursue private, go into private education, go into a British business school and get my bachelor's degree there. So when you make that switch, then of course you are eligible and you get scholarships from private institutions as well. So I did land a decent scholarship and then was able to kind of do that. So that is how I've kind of progressed. Even to
Mhm.
date, I'm at the moment finishing up my master's in law at this point, which is from the Cardiff Metropolitan University. So that again, they have a dedicated offshore campus in Colombo. So all of the courses are delivered through that campus. So we get pretty much the same education at probably one-fourth of the fee, possibly.
So let me get this right. You're a tech entrepreneur, have your qualifications in finance, big in the
Yep,
finance sector, done your qualifications into technology and IT and things like that,
yep,
and now you're doing a law degree. Would that be right? What would be the
yep,
equivalent? Okay.
yep.
So what, you want to become a lawyer now? What's occurring here?
I'll tell you why. I mean, interestingly, I think a part of my job, I think you and I went through this too at some point. Part of my job involves putting together complex contracts or reviewing complex contracts. So at this point, I think this also brings in AI, where AI is taking on absolutely all of these, easily spelled out, easy comparison jobs are taken in by AI, right? So what kind of now is left for someone like me is I my legal fees drastically reduce for like
Mhm.
mundane stuff where you have your AIs taking on. But having said that, you also need to kind of have the knowledge to train these AI bots as well. And also these models. On the other side, you also need to know what you're looking for. And even if AI is not perfect yet, at
Mhm.
least. So you should be able to validate parts of these outcomes. So that was the primary reason to get involved. But for as a teenager, I've always had a liking towards the legal profession. It's just that it was too competitive at that point, and my passion for or my liking for technology overtook that.
Yeah.
So I went down that path. So didn't waste time. I have some time, so thought I'll take a jab at it.
Take a jab at it. A law degree. What I mean, that just proves you have an absolute love for learning, I take, in
Percent.
discovering new things. So
Yeah,
that passion is what's naturally led to who you've become. Because you're not stopping or standing still and saying, I've made it. There's always something new to learn, which I think we discover in a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders within business that at no
100%.
point ever have they stopped the learning mechanism.
Yes,
And I think that's why people listen to a lot of podcasts and YouTube
100%.
channels or go to networking events because the brain is just open all the time to new ideas and new ventures and new things. So I
100%.
think that's a familiar pattern, and I would advise that to any person that's younger as well. You can never stop learning because one conversation with one person can change the direction of travel of your life completely, and you never know when it's going to happen. So your ears have always got to be open to when that might be.
Absolutely. I think just adding to what you said, Paul, I think one critical point I think I debated this with one of my professors at university this weekend as well. So his question was, hey, AI is coming in, you guys are technology guys. How are you? Are you guys going to take off all the legal jobs, etc.? So I think that poses an interesting challenge for you and me, right? I feel, or I think this is begun to happen now.
Mhm.
AI is taking off even technology jobs. The jobs right at the bottom are taken off. It's being automated, right? So when that happens, essentially everyone's like, okay, what's next for the human race? If
Mhm.
AI is going to take on all of these mundane jobs, what's going to happen? So I think that's where our cognitive power is really challenged. I think we need to move our cognitive capabilities to the next level. So I think that's the focus. So I think the more you challenge your brain, your cognitive power is where you will kind of see where you can kind of end up with all of these
Absolutely. I
changes.
I have a slight fear over this. I can see absolutely the genius that AI brings. But I think we're in this absolute race to become as efficient as we possibly can. Everything's at speed. It's like yesterday, I was getting presented a recruitment system, and it's
Right.
completely AI built,
Okay.
and it's tremendous. Where it
Yes.
does, absolutely tremendous. However, it did get me sitting there and thinking, because this thing will just eliminate all the CVs that it doesn't think that you will want to see. The problem is, what I would say is the best people I've ever employed in my life or ever come to work for me have not been the most outstanding CVs. Because what AI is going to eliminate is
Yeah.
the character and the personality and the behavior of that individual. Because most of those CVs nowadays will be written by Chat GTP. And I see that sometimes now when I have emails getting sent to me by employees, and I'm reading that email. Now, bearing in mind, I'll have had 3 years' experience of reading their emails, and I'm going, there's something dramatically different about this. All of a sudden, this person's been able to write a unique business plan or a strategic target that they're after and how they're going to do it. And when you sit down and talk to this person and you start to explore, what they mean by this, the context behind it, they're aghast, because what that's allowed them to do is level up. But when you bring them back to the forefront, you realize that's not them. And what I try and say to people is,
Yeah.
is AI in a way the most innovative thing that we could have ever created, but the thing that will kill all innovation? Because every piece of innovation has come from the human being, and we're eliminating it.
Sure, absolutely. So I think you're absolutely right in bringing that point out, Paul. What I also believe in is the exact point that you said is probably going to push us from, trying to travel within the solar system to try and, travel to another solar system.
Yeah,
So it, I think it has the possibility of, exploring a completely different realm than what we've been kind of in. Also, while it can change the world as we know it, for sure. Things that we are going to lose, yeah, definitely. I mean, with every industrial revolution, with every shift in
yeah,
technology, I think we've lost quite a bit. I think I'm sure you had friends who had really beautiful handwriting. Do you even talk about how
absolutely.
nice someone's handwriting is?
Yeah,
So I think this is what I've now, though I go to university, I still write handwritten notes because I don't want to miss my, I always loved, the ink and the
yeah,
paper. So irrespective of, how far down we are in technology, training models, but that gives you a completely different satisfaction.
there's
Writing
another
your own
side to
notes.
that, Noel, as well, that and this is going sort of like maybe into educational psychology.
Yeah,
That because I'm what you would class as a read writer. So I
yeah,
will scribble notes and write things on. I've got it here, right? You can't really see it, but
yeah,
writing documents down and taking notes. Now, the thing is, I don't actually need to go back and reread them, but I need that hand to make the movement to lock it into here.
absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think maybe we've evolved where you can do that by typing, which is fine
Yeah,
because you've still got hand movement. You're still thinking
yes.
about what it is that you're writing. But it's two distinct ways to actually store it within the brain. I think the more we rely on technology to do things,
Yeah.
the less opportunity there's going to be. I think our memory will suffer as a
Yeah.
result.
Exactly, exactly. I think so. That's something that I'm kind of working on because in my day to day there is so much of we review contracts. I write proposals. I review proposals. So stuff like that, doesn't really make sense for me to sit and write every piece of it. Where
Absolutely.
the absolute um, core of a proposal is being written by the person who's putting it together, but the rest of it is just it's a boilerplate. That's how it works. So in where you're doing a day job where most of it is that way, where you're only doing your critical thinking in putting together a solution, an implementation, a project plan. The rest of it, I think I try my level best to be as manual as possible.
Yeah.
Do the handwriting, do the walks, do the cycling, do all of that. Just, use technology where you make it better for your business, for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to make all the senses still come come to light.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
irrespective of what's going on, something still needs to program or come up with the idea of
Yeah.
what it is we're going to do. Absolutely. Okay. So, no, we've done, you're obviously a constant learner. And I think everybody that's listening to this will realize that you're an incredibly intelligent gentleman as well.
Kind
Speaking three
words.
languages, which is two more than I can do, and you can do one of them just as well as me. So, but I do want to know, at what point did you realize that you were going to build businesses? So
Hmm.
you've started off your career. You was it starting at the bottom? Did you get what we term as an apprenticeship or something like that into it? At what point then, moving up through the ranks, did you think I could do this?
I was learning, like I said, financial accounting, management accounting, and my dad goes, is it time for you to do like do you want to be an intern somewhere? Do you want to learn because you're just learning? Do you want to kind of put this into practice? And I was like, yeah, why not? And then he got me to meet one of his friends who was a finance manager. And then we got talking, and he's like, "Oh, what are the subjects you're learning now?" I said, "System design or something to do with system development and project management." He's like, "Oh, lovely. We are implementing a new system. Why don't you come in and project manage it?" I was like, okay, I didn't know head or tail. I was in, and there you go. And I was on the floor, and there was a Scottish gentleman who was the CEO at that point. And trust me, he pulled the daylights out of me during the 6 months of that internship. I still remember him. I can't recall his name, but he used to sit in his massive cubicle with a cigarette in one hand and a black coffee in one hand, and he'd be like, "Oi!" and get me in and say, "What are you doing today?" And yeah, it used to be interesting. I used to literally be so frightened of him. But yeah, I tried to put my words together, and then that was quite an experience. That's where it all started. So, fast forward from there, I came into implementation into a very large apparel manufacturing company in Sri Lanka, which is called Brandix. So, I had an experience of a lifetime working with a gentleman called Afam Ali. He was the CIO of the knit cluster at the point, and you and that project kind of turned the cogwheels in me to say, okay, this is how you got to do project management. And there were other people, other leaders who kind of, helped in terms of putting that project together. So there was every step of the way, Paul, I learned how all of these
Yeah,
different people kind of contributed to building a larger business. At the point that I was with the London Stock Exchange Group, Millennium IT, at that point, that is when I realized, okay, I've kind of understood how different parts of the business works. And also, we've now come into a point where we were doing mergers and acquisitions within LSEG. So the last 12 months during my stint at LSCG, I was part of the mergers and acquisitions team where we were spinning off one of the companies that I was working for. So that's where I learned the bolts and nuts with the other two founders of ONC's Fike and Camilla, where we looked at how the financials work, how the whole process works, right? So that is when I kind of got the confidence to say, hey, okay, this is how this works.
yeah,
So this is how you analyze if a business can be acquired, sold. How do you do that entire evaluation? And what is EBITDA? How does it translate into financial performance? So on and so forth, right? So that's where it started, Paul, with the experience and the learning of
yeah,
how you do
absolutely.
mergers and acquisitions.
I think there's a couple of things you said there that resonate with me so well, and it'll resonate with other people that have been on this podcast. Is that ability to look at people? I always look at people and go, everybody that's above me is a mentor in some way. Now, they can either be a positive mentor or a negative mentor. They don't all have to be great. They're not all positive influences, but you can turn them into positive influences. For instance, I don't believe you became the Scottish person, but you would have seen certain things that he'd done and he managed to get what he wanted, and that would have molded part of that to become you. You'd have also seen things that he'd done that you didn't like or you didn't feel comfortable around, like that fear factor, and thought, that's not going to be me. And there have been other people that you looked at the way that they actually really dived into the numbers and understood things like EBITDA, that it made you want to learn from them. So
Yeah.
I've always said that when people talk about great leaders and they say leaders, you're born a leader, I always say that's absolute nonsense. You develop into a leader, and you develop into a leader because something inside you wants to analyze people and try and build the character of who you want to become. And I kind of, that's where I always say behind the mask, because I think in business life we have developed mask because we built ourselves, and the original person that we were is no longer there. It may come out in your personal life and things like that, but ultimately we're different characters in different situations that we need to be in based on influences of the people that we've actually learned from on the journey up, positive or negative.
Absolutely.
Which takes me
Absolutely.
back to a very serious point that I always say to youngsters, and that is learn your craft, learn your trade, and learn from people. Because if you think that you're naturally leaving school and you become this person, no, you are going to fall or fail very, very quickly and be swallowed up. It's very rare that someone so young can just come out, and they've got to have an amazing idea that the world takes off, but they will
Yeah.
surround themselves with the experience and the knowledge and
Ex-
how to do that. So not everybody comes out of college and all of a sudden there's a Mark Zuckerberg. It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting.
and I've always thought that, particularly when I'm sort of like speaking to younger people and they want to become an entrepreneur, things like that. I'll often get people turn around to me and say, "I don't know what it is that I'm going to do, but I'm going to be an entrepreneur." And I'm going, "It's not a job title." Yeah, let's
I
just
know you
look
and I
at.
spoke about this when you were in
Yeah,
Colombo.
it's
Yeah, I
not a job
know.
title. It's there is no job that says I'm applying to be an entrepreneur. Right. An entrepreneur is someone that actually found a gap in the market for I know what could fix that, and
Absolutely.
took the risk and built the company and gave every hour they had to that project to actually take it to where it was going to be. And then what they had is an entrepreneurial spirit within them. They had a
Yep.
capability to go, I'm going to do that, a relentlessness. But there's no job. If somebody was writing a job description for an entrepreneur, God knows what you would put on it. Because where'd you start? I mean, if somebody
Exactly.
turned around to me and said, "You're an entrepreneur," I'd say, I don't even know what that is. I just know that I wake up every day and this is what I have to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, I think there's an interesting quote. I hope I don't misquote him. He said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
So I think that those are things that sometimes it's very tough to kind of instill in people. When you try to work as a team, what does it mean? You know, what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? I mean, what does perseverance even mean? I think that's becoming, I may take a lot of heat for this, but it's becoming out of fashion. You know, you try something out, doesn't work, you just dump it, move on. I agree with fail fast too, but you should really measure and make that call, I believe.
I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's
Hmm.
kind of like emotional context to it as well. I
Yeah,
always say this. I agree and fail fast. If you're going to try something, never be frightened to try anything. But if it's failing, make that
yep,
decision quickly about what you're going to do with it. And I think some people get emotionally attached to something that it's very difficult for them to make that decision. Almost, somebody once said to me, and I've always held it, that businesses are like babies to you. They're your children.
yeah,
And they're right. You have to nurture them, you have to build them, you have to love them, you have to be there for them. In fact, you're
yeah,
probably going to spend more time with them than you are your actual children. And at the end of the day, you're doing all that so that they can feed you, so that they can look after you. That's the idea
absolutely.
behind it. However, there is that part of you that has to somehow look at that and go, if it's not working, don't
Yeah,
keep throwing money at it, because there's also it's the concept has got to be accepted by the
yep,
world to buy off you. And if the world is turning around or people are turning around and saying, we don't actually like your product,
yeah,
then don't keep dreaming that it's going to do it one time. So I always say these people that say never give in, that there's times when you do have, it doesn't mean don't stop trying, but give in on that particular thing,
thing.
because
Yeah,
that's going to take everything from you.
everything away.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Spot on, Paul. I think those are some of the fundamental calls we make. Sometimes we miss. I think that's a collection of those decisions in my humble opinion also makes an entrepreneur, where you know what to put your time and money and
Yeah.
effort into and where to kind of pull it out as well.
Oh yeah, because no, there's no doubt about it. We've all really screwed up on projects before and spent an obscene amount of money chasing something. And when you, I mean, I've done it plenty of times, but you're always doing it in the hope that one of the things that you do takes
Will work
off.
out. Yeah,
But yeah, there's, people will never understand the experience of risking everything
everything.
and thinking it's going to go wrong or seeing the
Right.
signs it's going to go wrong. And then you've got the
Yeah, you're right.
stress, the anxiety, the mental torture that you go through, the
Sure.
worry, the shame, humiliation, all those fear factors come flooding in every time you take
Absolutely.
that gamble.
I think recently I stumbled upon this where all of the businesses that Amazon failed in, that Jeffrey Bezos failed in, I think that's a whole new business case. You see Amazon Prime doing well, you see Amazon Web Services doing well, but how about the 50 businesses that failed, you know? So no one really
That
talks
cost
about
him
it.
billions. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's exactly that's it. That is it in a nutshell. I think it was Richard Branson turned around and said the thing people fail to do is go on company's house website and type in the word virgin to see how many virgin businesses have been created over the
yes,
years. But
yes,
everyone wants to concentrate on the record company and the airplane network. He goes, there's
absolutely.
absolutely loads of them that failed. But
100%.
again, it's that everything is a learning experience. So, whereas I've made mistakes in the past, I'm not going to say that I would never make mistakes again. But I think what I will learn quicker is
Yeah,
when it's going wrong. That almost
absolutely.
listen to the gut, that
Yeah.
kinesthetic feel. Um,
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, you develop the ear for that.
and I think everybody thinks if they build technology, it's going to change the world and they're going to become billionaires. When actually you look at the amount of technology developments there's been and apps that have been built, and
Yeah.
sometimes it can be a very quick fad, or sometimes you never even get off the ground.
Ground.
It's just where everybody's pumping the money.
100%. 100%.
But I think that comes down to the fact as well, and you'll find this in business, look for where the gaps are and how you can do it better. Because there's no point doing the same as someone else, but doing it less. So it's that overall commitment to it. Now that brings me back to with Sri Lanka emerging as it is quite a huge tech country throughout the world. I mean, Sri Lanka's had to come through its rough times as well, a very rough time. I mean, when I
Yeah.
spoke to you when we were out in Sri Lanka, even my historical knowledge of Sri Lanka was very poor in terms of how many people have tried to conquer or had taken over your country. And do you know what? Without sort of like really upsetting people, the architecture in Sri Lanka is absolutely amazing because it's made up of so many different nations who wrongfully have invaded at the time, but left a country, with what I would describe as historical architectural beauty. Um,
100%.
but at the same token, I mean, I was amazed to discover, even though I remember watching it on the news when you guys had the tsunami on, was it Boxing Day? It was
Boxing
Chris
Day,
26th of
2004.
December 2004. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people won't actually associate that. And it was right. Sri Lanka is not a big country in terms of
No.
size. So the
Yeah.
impact of these must have to see Sri Lanka continuously rise up from
Sure.
every possible disaster. It must sort of make you look at you as a people and go, you're the most resilient nation that there can be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think as every Sri Lankan would wear this as a very proud, feather in their hat. I think so. When I started working in 2005, I think 2004 was just after that tsunami. And up until 2009, we had a civil war in the country for 30 years. So that ended in 2009 and then 2019. So we were just getting out and stabilizing after the war. And 2019, we had a horrendous terrorist attack in some of the well-known five-star hotels and churches on Easter Sunday. And then fast forward a couple of years, we had COVID-19,
Yeah.
which took off 2020, and then that ran us right into bankruptcy. So we went into an economic crisis in 2022. So if you look at it, personally, the time that I took over the business, where we decided to, move away from our very nice, stable jobs and start something on our own. Every other year, we had something or the other which came up, which we had to. I mean, to be absolutely fair, I don't think we had really a lot of help, except for just the three of us, four of us, or the five of us trying to put this together as a part of the organization. We had each other, helped each other, and put all of these organizations back on their rails. And I mean, I don't know if I've not really heard a lot of stories. We were a very small company making very small revenue when we started, but over all of this, I think we've built a multi-million-dollar business. I think, like me, there are so many Sri Lankan entrepreneurs who don't really possibly. I don't think we really articulate this as what it is. What's the Sri Lankans are generally very humble. We don't talk about this stuff unless pointed and asked. So I think there is a similar story filled with all of this continuous persistence, and grit, where we got over all of this. So I think this is something very similar you would see from the guys who sell fish on a bench on by the beach to the corporates. You speak to anyone, they're like, yeah, we went through it, but yeah, we're all right. We have a mix of grit and typical island mentality as well.
I think in terms of all of these adversities, I think the thing that I absolutely adored about it and something I preach a lot about is, you can either have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And if you have a growth mindset, then you always have to look for opportunity, you always have to look for challenges, and you always have to overcome them. Sri Lanka is proving with the growth of the country right now that you've got a nation of growth mindset because it didn't go into victim mentality. It didn't
Sure.
sit and wilter away. No matter what it's gone through, it's always rose to the challenge. And I think as a nation, you can be extremely proud. And as a person, but I think that's helped to nurture some of the greatest leaders now to come out of Sri Lanka. And I think the humbleness at some point, whilst you never want it to erode away, I think there's a lot of stories to be told that a lot of people can learn from.
100%.
Because no matter how bad we think life can be or how much the issues and stresses can get within the sense of the business world, there's bigger pictures at force here. And there's nature at force. And if you can grow a business after all that trauma and get people thinking that we can do this, then you are the architecture of a phenomenal growth mindset. And I've seen
100%.
that within your team. And it is that I think is what is encouraging people to say, actually, if I want to invest my money into something, or I want people to, I want a working team that wants to grow something, you're going to go to a nation that has got a point to prove, and your nation always has a point to prove.
Absolutely. I think you were spot on. I think, like DXDY, your experience with DXDY, I think there are so many organizations, tech startups who do really fantastic, builds to products, to services. Sometimes, there are organizations in Sri Lanka who always want to bring in the best that's used in the US or, any developed country. But, I I would challenge anyone within this that we can build some of the best technology. I mean, it may not have been built already, but there's nothing stopping us from, building and helping businesses adopt some of the best technology. We got it.
Absolutely. So no, in terms of, I mean, obviously you lead over a large amount of people now, and also one of the big differences between myself and you is most of my travel, because I think that's the thing that people forget. As a CEO, you ain't sat behind an office desk, you're out and about. But most of
Yeah,
my travel is across the UK. I mean, it's in every part of the UK continuously every week.
yeah.
But yours is slightly different because you're always having to jump on planes. So, I mean, if we were to sort of like rhyme off the countries that you are going to, or even planning to go to in the next year,
Yeah,
it's not like they're just down the road. It's not a 3 hour travel journey
it's not.
because
It's
you've
not.
spent a bit of time in America,
Yeah.
Australia,
And then,
India,
and Singapore, uh,
Singapore. Yeah,
and recently we've brought in Bangladesh as well. So you have Bangladesh. So I think the newer areas are going to be the Middle East, Middle East, Bangladesh is huge in terms of potential. There is so much industrialization that's happened, but that there is so much. I would say they are really behind. It's just that the awareness. My previous trip was also to do some implementation for a customer. But whilst I was at it, I also spoke to a lot of these large industrialized, organizations who have massive factories and go into tons and tons of some of them manufacture like 4 or 5 million pieces of apparel every month. So there is quite a bit of potential there. So we are looking at that, and there is some very interesting work which I can't possibly talk about because of the paperwork coming out of Singapore as well. And yeah, I'll be traveling to Australia in the next 2 to 3 months as well. Some good opportunities that we're working on. So yeah, like you said, yeah, that's all lined up. And yeah, got to do all of that as well. Yeah, it's not definitely, I would say Singapore's the only one that has a Singapore, Bangladesh, 3 hours. I'll be gladly doing those, but everything else is quite far.
I think people think you live quite an exotic lifestyle, but they don't realize it's literally on a plane, in a taxi, into a hotel, into a
Yeah,
meeting, back to hotel, back on plane. It's not,
yeah.
you're not there as a tourist.
No,
It's
you're not. I mean, you're lucky if you get a day or two,
yeah,
to kind of go around. And if you can slot in a weekend between your business meetings, then yeah, of course.
absolutely. And you do try, but it's everybody wants you. Yeah,
Tough,
that's one of the problems.
tough.
But in terms of the future, I mean, you just spoke about the different countries and businesses that
Yeah.
you'll be working with. What is the plans for for you for DXDY? What's your business plan over the next couple of years?
So I think there is some focus in cybersecurity in the next I would say 3 to 6 months, where we would either put together a cybersecurity outfit or we would acquire something in those lines. I think that's something that we already have. And in addition to that, we are looking at the apparel fashion space very closely. I think we have quite a bit invested in that space, and we have been acquiring and customers in that space, and we have been pushing quite a bit of solutions in that space. So yeah, I think geographically we'll be moving around Bangladesh, Vietnam in the region, and I don't think we'll be doing too much in terms of fashion outside of Asia uh, for the time being. But in terms of our solutions for care, social care, healthcare, non-profits, and other areas, I think those we will continue to focus on in the US and the UK and now
Uh,
Australia. Yeah.
and you're always on the lookout for people that have got ideas around building technology for their
Absolutely.
businesses. I mean,
Absolutely.
just so anybody that's wondering what my relationship is with Noel, so I built a tech software called Confident Competence, developed and built by DXDY out in Sri Lanka. Now, a lot of people have asked me, why did you choose to go to Sri Lanka? But I think Noel has explained it perfectly well, the reasons for that. And
So,
it's so important that when you're choosing a tech company, it's people that you can work with, and they're going to see all sides of you. So when Noel was explaining that Scottish person, obviously he wasn't explaining me, but what it did is it built him up an experience of how to deal with people like me. So if you are looking at app development, if you're looking at software, care planning systems, etc., like that, then reach out. They can find you on LinkedIn. No, you're
yeah.
very prominent there. Okay, good stuff. Right, no, a couple of questions. They always ask me to end this on. If you could leave one piece of advice, lesson, or reminder for anyone listening, whether they're building a business, leading a team, or just figuring life out, what would you give them?
If you are passionate about something, if your senses are, pushing you towards doing something, I think you should take it. I think it's what you're meant for. Go for it. You will inevitably, you can fall. If you do fall, pick yourself up and keep going. I think what I tell my team, no matter what happens, we don't have good days every week. So essentially, just get up, dress up, and show up. Keep doing it, and I mean, with time, you will get there. I think that's been the motto. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Believe you can as well. I actually,
100%.
before I came on this, I had a very quick discussion where I pulled all the team into the office here, and basically said, never let fear or shame stop you from doing something. And we do that quite a lot, you know.
Yeah,
So ultimately, you can always be better than you were yesterday, and you can always have that motivation to do it. But if you
100%.
have a shit day, it's a shit day.
That's it. You
Don't
move
make
on.
tomorrow a shit day because of it. Do something about it, and that's the
Absolutely.
turning up mentality that you've got to do. Oh, one last thing that I would say to you, no, sorry, I should have asked this earlier, but something someone else said to me in a podcast, and it just got me thinking. And that was, if you were actually advisors, so let's say someone comes to work for you,
Hmm.
and they've got this creative ambition that they're going to become you one day. What would you want to see in them that would get your attention to want to commit some time towards them?
Very timely question. Good question, Paul. I think one of the most important things is where you have it in you, where you don't have to execute, complex tasks, simple tasks if you that you need to do on a day-to-day basis, where you're supposed to deliver something to a client, let's say. You're supposed to deliver it. You also deliver it, and also you make it a point to ask the customer, hey, what do you think about the delivery? Were you happy? Things like where you have the grit to do certain things, and also where you are able to kind of go the extra mile. So those are the little things that I pick up. So
Yeah.
over time, when a collection of these can really put together a good image of this person or personality.
Yeah, absolutely. I've also always looked at it another way, and we kind of have this almost woke environment now where you work till this certain time and everybody gets to go home, and that's liberty and that's freedom, and there should be a clear work-life balance. But I always
Yeah,
think to myself, if somebody wanted to grab my attention in a normal working day, it's going to be very difficult for you to get that because
yeah,
everybody wants your attention, and you're going to focus on the things that are priority.
yeah,
However, what I tend to find myself in the office, or when I tend to find myself in the office where I enjoy it the most, is at the end of the day when everybody's gone home. Because I just have that last hour, hour and a half where I'm playing catch up and you're not being disturbed.
yeah.
However, there is a person in the office who always seems to be there. And I always naturally go in and end up spending 20 minutes just chatting with them. Now, that person is getting 20 minutes of my time every single day just
Absolutely.
because they've stayed, and therefore they are getting noticed for the right reason. And I always say, if you're
Correct.
someone that wants to climb, put yourself in a position where you manage to find that one-to-one time where you can get to know that person and learn from them.
Spot on. Yeah, I think I've seen that and experienced that too. I think you're spot on with that as well, Paul. Yeah, I think they value your time. You
Yeah.
also tend to see, okay, is someone in, do their job and go on, and then they'll probably drop you a WhatsApp or an email saying, hey, this task is done. And then on the other side, you have, a bunch of guys who are there just to show themselves off to you, etc. You have all these different, different scenarios. But yeah,
But what they need to always remember is all the years of experience that we've both had. You can smell the bluffer, you can smell the bullshitter very quickly. So you're always going to
absolutely,
get to the honesty. And I think
100%.
knowing someone personally or starting to begin to understand them personally and them relating to you,
Yeah, yeah.
you start to almost, in a way, there's many people I've mentored, not because I've had the time to do it, because I felt I've had the need to do it, because personally there was something in them that made me go, I'm going to help you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it
Yeah.
it makes sense. I think it also, personally gives you a little bit of, satisfaction that you worked with someone, you work
Yeah.
towards their goals, etc., and you've got it done. So yeah.
So, last word, the launch list. I'm going to be really interested to see who you come up with this one. So, if you had the opportunity to share a launch with any three individuals, past or present, who are you choosing and what would you hope to learn from them?
Well, I've always kind of thought about it. I think I've had this habit of not trying to look for inspiration way too far from from where I am. I would say there are three individuals who've kind of really made an impact in terms of businesses in Sri Lanka. So one of them is Mr. Mahesh Amalin, who is the founder of MAS Holdings. I think I've just said hello to him once or twice. That's about it. But We've done tremendous work for that organization, but I've never had the time to kind of talk to him or sit down for a lunch with him. So that would be one. And there is another person who has built a very successful apparel business also in Sri Lanka. His name is Miss Ashraf Omar. I've had the pleasure of meeting him, also getting shouted at him for delaying one of his projects, but all in good faith. But the they went through quite a bit through all of this. Like we are small scale business. We went through quite a bit. I know the pain that we went through.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how much they would have kind of gone through in terms of managing that. So both of them. And last but not least, I think there's one person sitting in our office, Mr. Faik Faiz, hardly invites us for lunch. Done tremendous things in the past. I know anyone who's worked with him, who's had the pleasure, knows this. Yeah, I think it would be nice for Fike to take me out for lunch to talk about this.
Listen, I've loved this, Noel. And the thing is that the reason why I love these so much is because often the people that I have on the podcast, there can be times where I've never met the person before. And there's times where I actually know the person from a personal position. But actually, I discover so much about the person. So we've spent time together, but often it's all business talk. So to get to know the personal side, the upbringing, what made you who you are, it's been fantastic. And I think the audience will have enjoyed listening to what you were talking about. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I think interesting. I not very rarely do I do this because I'm not good at it primarily. I'm good at getting on a call with you and talking you through your contract or your project, but not this. But yeah, thanks for letting me break the ice, and probably I'm going to do a few more now.
You should know, you should, because people need to hear your story and what you talk about. Absolutely. And you've been fantastic. I'll just make sure every conversation we have from now on, I've got a lawyer sat next to me when it comes to contractual needs. So
interesting.
So that's what I've learned from this today. Guys, if you've tuned in and you've listened to this, I hope you've enjoyed today's guest in Noel. Please give him a follow on LinkedIn and reach out to him. And if you are a podcast host, he's just told you he'll do some more, so get him on. And it's been wonderful connecting with Sri Lanka as well. I'm got to say, just the last thing, I never thought about holidaying in Sri Lanka, but I certainly would, because it's such a beautiful country. And I only got to see the capital and a little bit outside of it, so there's a lot of it that I've still got to explore next time. Join me for the next episode of Behind the Briefcase, which will probably be getting released in about 2 weeks' time. But just to keep yourself up to date with that, go over to the LinkedIn page, look at Behind the Briefcase, give it a follow, give it a like, or on YouTube, find Behind the Briefcase and subscribe to it to keep yourself up to date with everything. So thank you for your time. Have a great week, everyone. And I will catch you next time on Behind the Briefcase.